Theirs was a romance for the ages. She was a devoted single mother looking for a fresh start.
She was a nice young lady, you know, very warm, very caring.
He was a small-town cop who'd sworn to serve her and protect her.
Police work was his passion. He bled blue.
But just when it seems their relationship is destined for new heights, tragedy strikes like a lightning bolt.
Yes, man, something ain't right.
A terrifying disappearance sparks a massive search.
Deep down, I think everybody knew something was very wrong.
And a mysterious string of notes left behind points police in the direction of an unlikely suspect.
That note was a note of somebody very troubled.
When the cloud of mystery is lifted, one person is dead, and a key witness has no memory of what's transpired.
He was found laying face down.
There's blood on the bed, there's blood on the floor. She's laying kind of crumpled.
I didn't believe it, didn't want to believe it, you know. This is not happening.
It was like an episode of The Twilight Zone. She has the knowledge of Wayne's murder, but not the memory of it.
December 11th, 2004. It's a tranquil evening in the city of Gainesville, Texas. But just past 4 a.m., a night manager at a local hotel receives an alarming call from one of their guests. Heading down the hall to investigate, the manager attempts to enter the guest's room, but finds it locked.
Hello, ma'am? Ma'am, hello? Miss? Management?
The door had the deadbolt, so the front desk worker called the maintenance man and actually had him break down the door.
Stepping inside the darkened room, the two men make a startling discovery. Lying on the floor and alone in the room is the female caller.
The room was kind of in a disarray, and they found her laying bloody on the floor, crumpled up, almost fetal-like position.
The woman seems to be in a daze and is slurring her words.
I just need to get up. She's on the floor, and she has what they can see as a gunshot wound.
The bullet went in her head just above her eye.
No, just stay down, okay? Just stay down.
Lying beside the woman is a .25 caliber handgun.
Just keep talking to us.
The hotel manager dials 911.
Yes, I need emergency. I've got a woman shot.
Within minutes, police officers are on the scene.
When they get there, the scene is fairly chaotic. Their first response is number one, to take care of her, to try to assess her injuries and save her life.
Ma'am, where are you hurt? Ooh, hey, let's make sure we get an ambulance for her real quick.
Storm at 1047. I got one black female, gunshot wound to the head. Step it up, please.
EMTs arrive moments later, and the woman is immediately rushed to a nearby trauma center. But given her life-threatening injuries, it's unclear whether she'll live or die. Meanwhile, at the hotel, authorities try and make sense of what happened.
There was alcohol there. I think there were some over-the-counter sleeping pills and things she had bought.
Finding no one else in the room, officers are left with one of two scenarios. Either the woman's injuries were self-inflicted, or her assailant had fled the scene.
It's like, what is going on here? Why is the room torn up? Like, why? What is going on?
The whole thing just seemed more bizarre than anything.
The situation grows more disturbing when police identify the woman as Denise Miller and discover that Denise and her boyfriend, police officer Wayne Irby, were reported missing just 24 hours earlier.
Officer Irby did not show up for work. He's missing and she's missing. That raised everybody's red flags.
But what exactly had happened, and where was Denise's boyfriend now? Unraveling that mystery would require investigators to reconstruct the terrible events of the last 24 hours, and along the way, expose a tale of love, jealousy, and some say, cold-blooded murder. Growing up in Kansas City, Missouri, Denise Swall was one of the most popular girls in school.
Everybody liked Denise. She seemed like such a sweet person, bubbly and personable.
Even as a teenager, Denise dreamed of the day she could start her own family. A dream that seemed to come true when at 22, she married her college sweetheart. In 1986, Denise gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Whitney. And 2 years later, to son, Walter.
They were wonderful children. Both of her kids were wonderful kids.
But after the birth of her children, Denise's marriage began to falter. In 1995, she and her husband filed for divorce. Looking to start her life over, at 36, Denise packed up the kids and moved to the close-knit Dallas suburb of Little Elm, Texas.
She was just looking for a clean slate, you know, a fresh start, just getting away from old places that probably brought up bad memories.
Denise landed a great job with a local liquor distributor. She managed her money well and was able to build a stunning new home for her and her children.
She seemed to be very successful, beautiful home, beautiful family, pictures on the wall, everything was perfect.
Well, almost perfect. Denise still wanted a good man to share her success with. Then one day in 2003, Denise answered a knock on her front door and was caught off guard to see a police officer standing outside.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
My name is Wayne Irby of the Little Elm Police Department. I noticed you had your garage door open. We got a lot of thefts in the neighborhood. You might want to close it.
Okay.
Well, I'm giving you my card, okay? You give me a call if you need anything, all right?
I will do that.
All right, now appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now.
Denise appreciated the gesture, especially since it was coming from a big, strong officer like 37-year-old Wayne Irby. A 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department, Wayne wore his passion for his job on his sleeve.
And he bled blue, as we say in the law enforcement industry.
He was somebody that liked to get out and meet people on his beat. He was just one of those people that made you feel good.
It wasn't long before Officer Irby came knocking on Denise's door again. But this time, it had nothing to do with police work.
Since we last met, I definitely couldn't stop thinking about you. And I was hoping I could take you out to dinner, you know, maybe a movie.
Sure.
He told me, he said, man, I met this young lady. He said, I think I'm gonna settle down with this one.
Denise felt the same way, and after their very first date, the couple became exclusive.
He took to her just as much as she was taken by him, and I think it clicked in that sense. I mean, how could it not?
Wayne Irby started talking about how serious they were getting. He said he really liked Denise a lot.
Receive $100?
A divorced dad himself, Wayne was an immediate hit with Denise's 2 kids.
The kids and him got along great. They treated Wayne like a father, a figure. They seemed to be all one big happy family.
Even so, as the relationship progressed, Denise began to suspect Wayne was just a little too friendly with some other women he ran into on his beat.
He was a ladies' man. There were a lot of women in the community and outside of the community that would talk about him often.
Eventually, Denise confronted Wayne about the situation, but Wayne vehemently denied the accusations.
He would get upset with her and tell her, you know, there's nothing going on with anybody. He'd tell me, Walker, man, I'm not doing anything.
Was Wayne being honest? On the surface, it was hard to tell. Either way, the allegations took a toll on the relationship.
When there is a trust break, not only do you mistrust that person, then you mistrust the things within yourself.
But by the spring of 2004, Wayne and Denise seemed to have put their trust issues behind them. And later that year, the couple bought a house together.
At that point in his life, he was ready to settle down, and that's the reason he bought that home with her.
But life under the same roof wasn't everything Wayne and Denise expected. And soon, the couple's old trust issues began to rear their head again. A few months later, Wayne decided they should go their separate ways.
There's a lot of crying, a lot of tears.
They were fighting, and he was threatening on leaving.
Wayne moved into a rental home across town. But when Denise unexpectedly lost her job in November of that year, he began having second thoughts about the separation.
They reconciled when Denise lost her job because he didn't want her and her children to not have a home, and tried to work it out.
But just as it seemed Denise and Wayne were back on track, their world turned upside down. It begins at 6 a.m. on December 10th, 2004. Members of the Little Elm Police Department file into their squad room for their morning briefing. Everyone, that is, except for Wayne Irby.
And he hadn't come in. And so, you know, he called, he didn't answer. And that was, well, first of all, it wasn't normal behavior.
Irby? Have I seen Irby? When he comes in, let me know.
An hour passes, Then too, Wayne is still a no-show for work.
He was always at work, there early, ready to go.
It's uncommon, almost unheard of, for an officer to not show up on duty when it's his turn. And so everyone knew early on that something was just not right.
What no one on the police force realizes is that Officer Wayne Irby isn't the only missing person in the town of Little Elm. So is the love of his life. A chance encounter sparked a fiery romance between Denise Miller and police officer Wayne Irby. But despite their undeniable chemistry, the relationship had its fair share of ups and downs.
It was somewhat stormy. They had their problems.
Things had gotten serious, but there was a concern about her jealous tendencies, and there were some underlying issues in their relationship that had to be resolved.
Just when it seems Denise and Wayne patch things up, police in their hometown of Little Elm, Texas find themselves embroiled in a mystery. It starts on December 10th, 2004, when Wayne failed to report to duty for his 6 a.m. shift.
Wayne was not somebody that was late. And so when he did not show up as he was scheduled, didn't come to briefing, didn't call anybody, people began to worry.
That just didn't make any sense. Wayne always checked his phone, he always played his messages.
But as the hours roll by, Wayne's friends on the force grow increasingly concerned, particularly Cynthia Medrano.
I went into the chief's office and I said, something's wrong. He's not calling me back. Something's wrong.
Hey, Cynthia, what can I do for you?
I haven't heard from Wayne at all, and I'm really worried.
Tell you what, I'll have a couple officers swing by and do a welfare check, okay?
Thank you.
Just before noon, Police Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatches officers to conduct a welfare check at the house Wayne shares with Denise and her children.
We had officers go by Denise's home. We knocked and nobody answered.
There were no vehicles in the driveway. The doors were locked, front and back door.
Now unable to locate either Wayne or Denise, police shoot for the next best thing.
We went to the high school and talked to the kids, Denise's kids.
I'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
That's fine.
According to Denise's children, they hadn't seen their mom or Wayne in nearly 24 hours.
They had said she had not come home that night and didn't know where she was.
Denise's daughter, Whitney, also recounts a disturbing phone call she'd received around midnight.
She was like, I'm running errands, and then she said, I love you.
Is that unusual?
She doesn't usually talk like that.
She doesn't.
She said that they could get themselves ready for school in the morning. Her kids were old enough and certainly mature enough to take care of themselves, and it's exactly what they did.
Whitney states that before heading off to school that morning, she tried to call her mother one more time.
She wasn't answering her cell phone. They couldn't find their mom. She was missing.
Whitney says this seemed completely out of character for their mother. For police, it's a startling turn of events. They've got not one, but two missing persons.
Deep down, I think everybody knew something was very wrong.
Nobody is more concerned for Wayne Irby's safety than his partner on the force, Jerry Walker. After searching the streets of Little Elm for hours, Walker and another officer, James Wynn, decide to check out the rental home Wayne vacated when he moved back in with Denise. They obtain a key from the landlord and prepare to enter the home.
Wayne? Wayne! Dining room clear.
In the kitchen, officers make an ominous discovery.
He and I both observed Wayne's fanny pack that he carried with him often and his cell phone. And that was a sign immediately that this was not good.
Moments later, Officer James Wynn turns the corner down a hallway and sees something that stops him dead in his tracks.
James Wynn sliced around the corner and took a gasp of breath. And he stopped and backed up, and he looked at me and said,
"Don't come any closer.
Just stop right where you're at."
But at this point, Detective Walker has come too far not to press forward.
Wayne Irby was lying on the ground, and there was what looked like an injury to the back of his head.
There was no sign of any fight or any violence at all.
It seems the search for Wayne Irby has just taken a turn from the mysterious to the macabre. But where is Denise? It's a question that will soon be magnified by another troubling discovery. The hunt for missing police officer Wayne Irby and his longtime girlfriend Denise Miller has just taken a dark and bloody turn. Police have found Wayne inside a rental home in Little Elm, Texas, the victim of an apparent gunshot wound.
It was very sullen moment. This was the first murder of my career, and it happened to be my partner.
I was at work when I got the call. It was devastating.
Given that Denise had failed to return home the previous evening, officers fear for her safety as well. But they find no sign of Denise anywhere inside Wayne's home.
It didn't take more than 40 seconds to finish up checking the rest of the rooms, and she wasn't there.
Officers radio for backup. Within minutes, investigators from both the Denton County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers begin the grim task of processing the scene.
He was shot one single time, right almost dead center of the back of the head.
The location of the wounds suggests Officer Irby never saw the kill shot coming.
Yeah, so that would place the shooter about here.
Was it possible Wayne had been ambushed? If so, by whom? Given Wayne's passion for police work, one possible theory is that the shooting could be work-related.
In police work, you're not gonna always make everybody happy. Sometimes, no matter what you do, you're gonna piss somebody off.
However, Wayne's partner, Jerry Walker, finds it difficult to believe Wayne's murder is related to the job.
He's just a very personable guy. Easy to talk to, always smiling, you know? There's no way he could have had any enemies out there.
But if the crime isn't work-related, then what sparked this fatal encounter? Given the timing of Denise's disappearance, detectives can't help but wonder if she could be involved.
She was not there, and Wayne's handguns were not there either. We didn't know where she had gone.
But to those who know Denise and Wayne best, this theory seems equally implausible.
I don't think anybody thought that she was capable of doing something like this.
I didn't see that side of Denise. I thought she was a very caring young lady.
Still, Denise's sudden disappearance does raise a number of troubling questions, not the least of which is the fear that she may be a victim as well.
We put out an all-points bulletin for Denise Miller with her description and vehicle description that we knew of, and then just hope to hear something soon.
While patrol officers search for Denise, detectives begin the process of interviewing friends and colleagues, and quickly realize Wayne and Denise have had their ups and downs. The roots of the couple's problems always centered on one thing: Denise's suspicions that Wayne was cheating on her.
He was really friendly, though, so that might have been just a natural response. He was really friendly, really charming.
There was a constant thought that he was doing something outside of their relationship that he shouldn't be.
She was always accusing him of messing with other women. She never trusted him.
In speaking to the couple's friends, investigators can't help but wonder if there's some truth to the rumors of Wayne's infidelity. But if the allegations are true, it opens up a whole Pandora's box of possible suspects.
It could be one of them other female friends that he was talking to that he cut ties with. You know, if I can't have him, you can't, and then I'm gonna end your life too.
With the case getting more twisted and more scandalous by the minute, police decide to search Denise's home in Little Elm.
We go through and we start looking and we don't see any signs of anything.
But in the master bedroom, investigators find a startling piece of evidence.
They found a note. It was a handwritten note, seemed to be coming from Denise.
The letter, I think, was indicative of someone who was contemplating suicide, if you read between the lines.
But the note isn't the only discovery that gives investigators cause for alarm.
Here's his duty belt.
When they were searching the house, his uniforms are hung in the closet. His duty belt is hanging on the wall, and the holster was empty.
Did you find his gun?
No, sir, I haven't.
We need to find that thing.
Between the missing weapon and the possible suicide note, it seems a new theory about Wayne's death is beginning to emerge.
You know, the police are never, ever going to rule out any other possibilities, but everything in this case pointed towards Denise.
But is Denise truly responsible for Wayne's death? Or are other more sinister factors at play? While police are still uncertain, one thing is clear. They need to find Denise Miller, and they need to find her fast. December 10th, 2004, investigators in Little Elm, Texas have discovered missing police officer Wayne Irby gunned down inside his former rental home. At first, detectives feared Wayne's girlfriend Denise might also be a victim. However, a bizarre note found inside the home they shared, coupled with a missing handgun, have detectives wondering if Denise might have killed Wayne, then turned the gun on herself.
They found a note inside Denise Miller's house. It was a disturbing note saying, "I'm tired of hurting. I don't want to hurt anymore." It was kind of a desperate plea.
If Denise has taken her own life, it's imperative detectives find her body. But there's a chance the suicide note is just a ruse. And if so, they must consider Denise armed and dangerous.
I was worried about another police officer having an encounter with her, and either A, her harming him, or B, him having to use deadly force against her. So everyone was very aware of the situation.
As their search for Denise intensifies, investigators must decipher what Denise meant by her troubling letter. Curious if the couple had any prior domestic altercations, detectives decide to dig deeper into Denise and Wayne's relationship and make a shocking discovery in the process.
She had come to the police department to file a complaint against Officer Irby for domestic violence. She had said that he had assaulted her.
According to the affidavit from December 2003, it started when Denise showed up unannounced at Wayne's rental home and discovered Wayne with another woman.
Denise showed up at his house, and the house that he lived in had a window right by the door, and you could see the female's purse on the table. And Denise kept knocking on the door. He was not going to open the door because he knew there would be trouble.
But Denise wouldn't stop knocking. Eventually, Wayne opened the door.
That's when all hell broke loose.
Who is that woman?
Look, Denise, she's just a friend of mine.
Wayne, what is she doing here?
We're just having a cup of coffee, that's it.
The report asserts that the couple started arguing, and the encounter quickly turned physical.
Every time I turn around, you're doing the same thing.
According to the incident report, both Denise and Wayne suffered physical injuries, but it seems Wayne got the worst of it.
He had scratches all over his face. He had a big black eye.
Pursuant to the report, Wayne claimed Denise had been the aggressor and that he'd simply tried to defuse the situation.
She went nuts. She started smacking him and hitting him and punching him.
When Wayne's female friend corroborated his version of the incident, Denise withdrew her complaint.
She came in, I think, the next day and said she had made it up. It didn't really happen. They talked to Wayne, and he said that she had come at him, and he was really trying to defend himself, and he had injuries too.
I think it was a heat of the moment situation, and they were arguing or fighting or something. She got mad, and she was gonna take her pound of flesh, and it didn't matter to her what happened.
And according to several of Wayne's friends, after the incident, Denise's behavior grew increasingly erratic.
He and I were working a traffic crash, and we were out on the road for a long time. And when he got back in the car, he just shook his head and showed me a cell phone with many, many missed calls, and they were all from Denise Miller.
It got to the point where he just, he felt smothered and smelled like, she was just too jealous. He said, "I can't take this anymore."
One of Wayne's friends told investigators that the day before his death, Wayne decided to end things with Denise once and for all.
They wasn't getting along as well. And he mentioned to me that he was gonna move out. And he just wanted out altogether. His mind was made up.
Along with her suicide note, Wayne's decision to leave Denise for good seems to cement her involvement in his murder. As does another chilling bit of evidence CSIs later find at the scene of the crime.
At Wayne Irby's residence, they found on the kitchen island a note, a handwritten note from Denise that said, "I'm sorry, I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms."
Basically, it was a confession note that she apologized for what she had done.
So I was just shocked. I didn't believe it. Didn't want to believe it, This is not happening.
The notes suggest Denise has also taken her own life, but investigators know that finding her is now more important than ever.
I really thought in the back of my head that she had gone somewhere else to commit suicide. But she's capable of shooting someone she loved. She's more than capable of shooting anyone else.
Thankfully, it doesn't take long for the All Points Bulletin on Denise to pay dividends. And at 4 a.m. on December 11th, police in Little Elm receive a call of a possible suicide attempt at a hotel in nearby Gainesville.
We got a call from Gainesville police. They linked the bulletin that we put out to Denise Miller. She had a gunshot wound to the head.
They found Denise on the floor with the covers off of the bed, obviously in distress. She was seriously injured. The .25 caliber handgun was found on the floor next to her.
Paramedics rushed Denise to an area hospital. In the meantime, investigators combed the room for evidence.
There was alcohol there. There was some over-the-counter sleeping pills.
Investigators also find Wayne's missing .40 caliber service pistol inside the room, along with evidence that explains how Denise's suicide attempt went awry.
They found one of Wayne's handguns. It looked like she'd attempted to load it and tried to load it with the bullet backwards so it wouldn't chamber.
When Wayne's service weapon jammed, it appeared Denise had tried to end her life using the next best thing, a .25 caliber pistol.
She's probably crying the whole way, like, oh my God, what have I done? Probably remorse has set in.
I think she wanted to forget about what she just did. If she bought the bottle of alcohol and sleeping pills, she just wanted to forget about everything. But then, it was her time to try to end her life too.
But just when it seems like police are starting to put the pieces of this puzzle together, investigators discover a third suicide note, one that suggests that even though she planned to kill herself, Denise hadn't intended to kill the love of her life.
She writes a very lengthy, at least in comparison to the two previous notes, a very lengthy suicide note.
There was a line in the note that alluded to her accidentally shooting Wayne and that she freaked out and just ran.
But was Wayne's death truly an accident? Only one person knew for certain, and she was lying in a hospital bed with a bullet lodged in her brain. And the story she'd tell police would throw the entire case into an upheaval.
Denise, can you tell me what happened in Little Elm last night? Yeah. You know Wayne's hurt, right?
I don't think so. Depending on where she was shot in her head, it could just cause a lot of things. It can cause amnesia, temporary memory loss. She's not clearly in her right mind.
On December 11th, 2004, just 12 hours after her longtime lover Wayne Irby was found shot to death, Denise Miller put a .25 caliber handgun to her head and pulled the trigger. Detectives have also found a series of suicide notes that seem to link Denise to Wayne's murder and suggest that if Denise couldn't have Wayne, no one could.
Wayne had made his mind up to end that relationship.
She's not clearly in her right mind because everything is going on in her head. It could have been a psychotic break.
But just when police seem to have solved the crime, a third and final suicide note found inside Denise's hotel room suggests Wayne's death might not have been intentional.
There was a single line about it was an accident.
Hoping to unravel this mystery before it's too late, investigators race to the hospital where Denise is being treated for the self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Denise Miller shot herself in the head. That trauma affected her brain, her cognitive abilities. It also affected her motor skills.
Despite her injuries, investigators believe Denise is coherent enough to provide a statement.
They're not sure at that point what her prognosis is going to be, so I wanted to get as much as a statement as I could from her.
That afternoon, doctors allowed Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy to proceed with the interview.
I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Placing a recorder by her bedside, Murphy questions Denise about the events leading up to the shooting.
Denise, can you tell me what happened in Little Elm last night? Yeah. You know Wayne's hurt, right?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? How come you left a note there telling me what happened to Wayne?
I don't know.
She could talk, but she had very limited recollection at that time of what had gone on. According to her, she was not aware that she had shot herself.
Although clearly reeling from injuries, when pressed for more details, Denise does admit to being in Wayne's house the day of the shooting.
Did you see him at his new house?
Yeah.
What happened there, Denise?
We argued.
About him moving out?
Yeah.
Then what happened?
I don't know.
When I told her that she had hurt Wayne, she said she hadn't. And then when I told her, I said, look, Wayne's dead, her basic response was, no, he's not.
It seemed suspicious to us that she could remember things from before, she could remember things from after, but somehow the part about killing Wayne Irby was gone.
Is Denise in denial? Or is there another possible explanation for her sudden memory loss?
She's got a combination of drugs and alcohol in her system, and she shot herself. So all that combined, you can kind of understand why she's completely disoriented.
The brain is a powerful thing, it's a powerful mechanism. It will shut down to protect you. Me personally, I've had a head injury, and I can't tell you certain things that happened. I can tell you what other people have told me, and I can remember certain incidents, but the actual time that it happened, I couldn't tell you.
After being questioned, Denise is sedated and flown to a nearby trauma center for additional treatment. When she wakes the following morning, her memory loss seems to have gotten worse. She's also now paralyzed on one side of her body and blind in one eye.
The nurse stated that when she told Denise that Wayne had been killed and that she had shot herself, that she seemed genuinely shocked.
It was very convenient for her not to have to remember what she did. But the fact of the matter was she killed a human being.
It was frustrating to a lot of officers, yeah, because everyone really wonders, is she just faking it?
On December 13th, police received the results of Wayne's autopsy report. The official cause of death is trauma caused by a single .25 caliber bullet to the back of the head. Ballistics revealed the bullet was fired from the exact same weapon Denise used in her botched suicide attempt. Running the weapon's serial number, police learned the gun is registered to Denise's stepfather. So how did it end up in Wayne's rental home? To investigators, the answer seems obvious.
I think she took that gun with her there to give him an ultimatum that she wanted him back, and if the answer was no, I think she intended to use it.
She's going over to a situation that she knows is volatile, or at least not good, and takes a gun with her. This was not an accident.
On January 18, 2005, police charged Denise Miller with first-degree murder. News of her arrest leaves friends and a community stunned.
People were numb, couldn't believe what happened.
I think everyone, or at least the people that were close to Wayne and knew Denise, didn't see it coming.
After 18 months of rehab and physical therapy, Denise is declared competent to stand trial. On July 10, 2006, at the Denton County Courthouse, the state of Texas versus Denise Miller gets underway. While the victim's friends and family are desperate to see justice served, Denise's supporters believe she's already paid a steep price for her own actions.
She was in a wheelchair. She was a very frail and weakened condition.
In their opening arguments, prosecutors urged jurors not to be swayed by Denise's frail appearance.
The prosecution said she looks like this, she acts like this, she's in this wheelchair because of something she did to herself.
Describing Denise as a jealous lover hell-bent on controlling her man, prosecutors assert that on December 9, 2004, Denise drove to Wayne's rental home armed with her stepfather's .25 caliber handgun. An argument allegedly ensued, and Wayne told Denise that the relationship was over once and for all.
I just can't do this anymore. You know, I was never cheating on you. You know, I've been there for you guys. You know, I love the kids. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired.
That's when, according to prosecutors, Denise took aim and fired.
Denise came to the house. She brought her .25 caliber handgun with her. There appears to have been an argument. Either Wayne was done arguing or he saw the gun. One reason or another, he turned his back on her and he was shot.
They called it the classic case of, if I can't have you, nobody else can.
To bolster their case, prosecutors introduced Denise's 3 suicide notes as evidence.
It's a confession. I mean, those notes were confessions.
Although defense attorneys don't dispute Denise had shot Wayne, they argue the officer's death had been a tragic accident.
She did go into a volatile situation. She did have a gun with her, but she didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
And the proof, they claim, were Denise's own words in the moments before she shot herself.
They pointed to the note that said, you know, I didn't mean to do it. I freaked out and I ran.
When people are writing their last note, their last words, their dying declaration, it's usually pretty credible. You can usually take it at face value.
But in Cross, prosecutors urged jurors to judge the body of that work and not one line possibly taken out of context.
There was a single line about it was an accident, but it was surrounded by a lot of things that indicate it wasn't an accident. Things like, you know, thou shalt not kill, I've done a horrible thing. So it's like she mixes in her guilt with that one line.
Still, defense attorneys argue that if Denise had truly intended to kill Wayne that day, her gun would have been fully loaded and she would have pulled the trigger more than once.
Typically, if you're going in with the intent, the purposeful intent of killing someone, your weapon's fully loaded. It's not kind of a Russian roulette situation. It wasn't fully loaded when he was shot.
It appears Denise's defense team has at least raised the possibility that Wayne's death was an accident. But prosecutors still have one piece of evidence at their disposal, evidence that has the potential to make or break the entire case. Charged with the murder of her boyfriend, Wayne Irby, Denise Miller now found herself on trial for a crime she claims to have no memory of committing.
She shot herself in the head. She was in a wheelchair. She had very limited mobility, and she had no recollection of the events whatsoever.
Her defense attorney said it was like an episode of The Twilight Zone. She has the knowledge of Wayne's murder, but not the memory of it.
Defense attorneys have asserted Wayne's death had been a tragic accident. Prosecutors have argued otherwise.
If this was truly an accident, wouldn't you call for help? Wouldn't you call for an ambulance? Miss Miller chose not to do any of these things.
And to bolster their claim that the crime was premeditated, that Denise couldn't have accidentally shot Wayne, they submit findings from the state crime lab into evidence.
We had the trigger of this gun tested, and it takes 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure just to pull the trigger on this gun. That negates that, you know, she just accidentally touched it and it went off.
Even more telling is the location of Wayne's injuries and Denise's own actions in the aftermath of the shooting.
Shot in the back of the head, what are the chances of accidentally being shot in the back of the head?
If it was truly an accident, the first thing you're gonna do is call for an ambulance, call for help. She didn't do that. Instead, she took his gun, wrote a note confessing, and fled.
But could a jury really convict Denise of a crime she had no recollection of committing?
It's a roll of the dice. Whether or not the jury's gonna have any empathy or sympathy for her, or if they're gonna say, you got what you deserved.
It wouldn't take them long to find out. After less than an hour of deliberation, on July 12, 2006, the jury returns with their verdict. Guilty.
Denise was in a wheelchair and she was very quiet, and when the verdict came back, she cried.
While the verdict surprises few in the courtroom, a bigger question still looms. Would jurors take sympathy on the already crippled woman and forego the death penalty?
They can look at her and think, oh, you know, she suffered enough. You know, she felt so bad about what she did. She tried to kill herself, and now look at her. She's, you know, disabled for the rest of her life. She's been punished enough.
The following morning at Denise's sentencing hearing, it appears jurors are in a forgiving mood. Denise is spared the death penalty. Instead, she's sentenced to 62 years in prison.
She wasn't a hardened criminal. She certainly wasn't any kind of threat. A 62-year sentence, it's equivalent to a life sentence, but it's not that word.
I think she should have gotten the death penalty myself.
Her 2 kids lost a mother. You know, their every family lost a son, so everybody lost in this situation. There wasn't a win in this situation at all. I was angry that the situation occurred the way it did. I wish if it came to the point and she couldn't get along with him and she didn't trust him, just leave him, but not to take his life.
She was in love with Wayne Irby. She wanted to live the happy little fairy tale romance, and that didn't play out. And then to come to find out that you're the cause, but you don't have any memory of it, that's very difficult to process and conceive.
Emotionally distraught, her blood pressure through the roof. She had discovered the missing money. She demanded that Priscilla be removed from all business accounts immediately. The bank told her they could not do it right then. She had to come back on Monday. Imagine the psychological collapse within that family dynamic. Margaret, a woman who worked her whole life to build a legacy, realizes her own daughter is a parasite draining her dry. The heartbreak must have been unbearable. She confronts Priscilla. She tells her the financial umbilical cord is being cut. Priscilla is about to lose the business, the money, the lifestyle, everything. Priscilla does not feel remorse. She feels a panic. She calculates her mother's life against her own comfort. By Monday morning, Margaret has to die before she can reach that bank. Priscilla drives to the house. She walks into the bedroom of the woman who gave her life, points a gun at her head, and pulls the trigger. When she returns hours later to check the body and finds her mother still breathing, she does not call an ambulance. She finishes the job. Then she knocks out a little piece of glass, scatters some jewelry, and plays the grieving daughter. It is a level of cold-blooded pathology that chills you to the bone. We arrest her. She sits in the interrogation room, stone-faced. She refuses to acknowledge her mother is even dead, the ultimate act of denial. But arrogant criminals always make one last mistake. While out on bond awaiting trial, Priscilla calls a convenience store clerk who blew up her alibi. We tap the phone. We listen as Priscilla tries to manipulate the witness, try and convince her she remembered the wrong day. It is pathetic. They took her to trial. It was a circumstantial case. We never found the murder weapon. But the jury saw through the fog. They saw the motive. They saw the lies. And they saw the monster sitting at the defense table. Guilty. Life in prison with the possibility of parole. People ask me how a daughter could kill her own mother. I tell them she stopped seeing a mother a long time ago. She only saw a bank account. When you let money become your god, human life becomes nothing more than a transaction. Margaret Abernathy deserved a quiet retirement surrounded by grandchildren. Instead, she got a bullet from the one person she trusted the most. The Abernathy family did not just lose a matriarch that day. The entire family died in that house. That is the tragedy of murder. It does not just stop one beating heart. It shatters the souls of everyone left behind. The scent of a secret. Humans are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, and they cover it up in ways that defy all logical comprehension. It is May of 2005 in the sleepy little retiree town of St. Petersburg, Florida. Yellow Pine Drive is quiet, peaceful, a place where people go to live out their twilight years. But behind the doors of foreclosed mobile home, a nightmare is waiting to be unpacked. At 10:30 in the morning, a cleaning crew arrives. They have been hired by a finance company to clear out a property that has been abandoned for almost 9 months. They open the door, and they are immediately hit by a wall of stench. They assume it is rotting food left in a disconnected refrigerator. My. If you have ever smelled the unmistakable odor of human decomposition, you never forget it. It clings to your clothes, it gets into your hair, it settles into your very soul. But these are civilians. They do not know any better. They walk past a half-undecorated Christmas tree, past Star Wars memorabilia and a foosball table. Assuming a child lived there, the trailer looks like a time capsule, abandoned in a hurry, but then they notice something strange. There are cardboard car air fresheners everywhere. Dial air fresheners on the counters, in the closets, boxes of baking soda, bowls of potpourri. Someone was desperately trying to hide something. They saved the worst-smelling bedroom for last. The door is shut. They walk in and find a mattress piled high with blankets. When they try to lift the bedding, it sticks to the mattress like Velcro. And then a plastic bag tears open and a human foot falls out, a foot with 5 toes. The cleaner calls 911, terrified. When patrol officers arrive, they find a body so badly decomposed, so mummified, they cannot even determine a race or gender. But the medical examiner finds the undeniable truth hidden beneath the decay. A single .38 caliber bullet hole in the forehead, no exigund, no signs of a struggle. This is not a natural death. This is cold, calculated murder. The innocent and the burden. To understand a murder, you have to understand the ghosts that haunt the living. Tax records show the trailer belonged to 2 sisters, Barbara and Deborah Burns. We need to identify the mummified remains, and the neighbors give us the key. They tell us Deborah had severe scoliosis, walked with a distinct limp, and only had 3 teeth. The medical examiner confirms the physical traits, and mitochondrial DNA makes it official. The victim is 40-year-old Deborah Burns. I tell you, my heart breaks for this victim. Deborah contracted scarlet fever when she was 2 years old. It ravaged her brain, leaving her permanently disabled, trapped forever with the mental capacity of a 6-year-old child. She was innocent, vulnerable, and completely dependent on the people around her. And someone put a bullet in her brain. That makes my blood boil. We treat victims of homicide with the utmost respect because they can no longer speak for themselves. We speak for them. So where's the older sister, Barbara? We dig into their past, and a tragic, suffocating picture emerges. Barbara was born in 1951, when her father died. She was pulled out of high school at the age of 15 to become Deborah's full-time nursemaid. Her life simply stopped. For 40 years, she worked minimum wage jobs, coming home to cook, clean, and care for her disabled sister and her aging mother. No social life, no freedom, just endless, grinding responsibility. In the year 2000, their mother passed away from Alzheimer's. Shortly after, their brother John died, but he left them an inheritance of $350,000. For the first time in her life, Barbara could breathe. She quit her job. They bought an $80,000 mobile home. They traveled to California and Australia. But a person with the mind of a 6-year-old does not understand financial restraint. Deborah bought pinball machines, endless toys, and showered expensive gifts on a man she met on the internet, who vanished the moment the cash dried up. In just 3 years, they blew through every single penny. They went from having it all to facing foreclosure, the breaking point. When the money ran out, the fantasy shattered. Barbara had to go back to work. Deborah, unable to comprehend the concept of poverty, became demanding, disrespectful, and physically abusive. She would throw tantrums, yell, and even hit Barbara when she did not get her way. The bank records tell a fascinating story. Deborah is dead, but her $651 monthly Social Security checks are still being cashed. By who? Surveillance footage from an automated teller machine gives us the answer. It is Barbara Burns. She is alive, well, and living in Virginia Beach, Virginia. You have to be kidding me. You kill your disabled sister, leave her rotting in a trailer, and flee across the country to cash your checks at a 7-Eleven? Criminals always leave a trail of breadcrumbs, and they always think we are too blind to follow it. My partner and I fly to Virginia Beach. We watch her working behind the counter at 7-Eleven. We wait until the end of her shift at 7 in the morning and make our approach. We bring her into an interview room. She is calm. She is cool. I ask her if she has any siblings. She looks me dead in the eye and says she has no relatives at all. I show her a picture of Deborah. She says she does not remember her. I tell you, the sheer audacity of it is staggering. You cared for this girl for 40 years. You slept in the same room, your heads inches apart, listening to her breathe every single night. And now you expect me to believe you do not know her? We press her. We tell her Deborah is dead. We tell her a body was found in her foreclosed home. And finally, the facade cracks. The tears come. She tells us about August 14th. It was Deborah's 40th birthday. They went out to eat, and an argument over money erupted. It turned into a physical fight back at the trailer. Deborah finally went to sleep. Barbara sat in the living room, terrified of her sister waking up and starting the cycle of abuse all over again. She had reached her absolute limit. She walked to the dresser, took out a handgun she bought for protection, stood over her sleeping sister, and pulled the trigger. The devil you know. She shot her once in the head, and then the panic set in. She unloaded the gun, hid the spent casing in the middle of a box of 50 rounds, and put the gun in a drawer. She wrapped her sister in sheets and plastic bags, and then she stayed. She lived in that house with her sister's decomposing corpse for 6 whole weeks, buying cardboard air fresheners and baking soda to hide the stench of her own sin. Barbara Burns was a good person who carried a crushing burden for 4 decades until she simply snapped. The defense attorney saw it. The prosecutor saw it. The judge saw it. They offered her a plea deal for manslaughter, and she took 15 years in prison. With good behavior, she was released after 12 years. Today, she walks free back in St. Petersburg. She tells people she does not remember pulling the trigger. She says she misses Deborah, wishes she could see her face every morning. Sometimes circumstances create a devil. The pressure of a ruined life, an empty bank account, and a thankless, endless task pushed a quiet woman to commit an unspeakable act of betrayal. But a devil is still a devil. You can buy all the air fresheners in the world, Barbara, but you can never wash away the scent of what you did in that room. The investigation into murder of Fred Brown remains one of the most chilling examples of how greed can poison the human spirit, turning a seemingly ordinary life into a stage for cold-blooded betrayal. It began on a quiet spring morning in April 1991 in the town of High Point, North Carolina, a community where folks rarely worried about locked doors or safety. Major Tom Shepard, a seasoned law enforcement officer, was called to the scene on Highway 68 with a body of 45-year-old Fred Brown lay face down in a ditch, executed with 2 shots to the head and 1 to the back. His life taken by someone he had likely trusted enough to stop for on a dark road. While the scene appeared staged as a robbery due to a missing wallet, the presence of a footprint on the victim's back told a different story to the investigators, revealing an act of personal, calculated malice rather than a random crime. Fred Brown was a man who lived a life of service, a Vietnam veteran and an economics professor who was universally regarded as a kind, steady, and decent human being. His life had been defined by his devotion to his family, including his wife Patricia, whom he had married in 1969 after meeting her at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. For 2 decades, they built a life together, but the harmony began to shatter after Patricia underwent open-heart surgery in 1990. This medical crisis triggered a profound shift in her mental state, as she became increasingly obsessed with collection of dozens of exotic birds and demanded expensive home renovations that pushed the couple into severe financial strain. Despite the constant verbal abuse and the pressure of their mounting debts, Fred remained committed to marriage, clinging to his religious beliefs against divorce, all while expressing a haunting fear to his friend and colleague, Kenneth Vaughn, that his wife wanted him dead. The investigation initially stalled because Patricia provided a solid alibi And with no forensic evidence to link anyone to the roadside execution, the case grew cold, leaving Patricia to collect life insurance and move to Alabama to restart her life with the proceeds of her husband's death. It was only 3 years later, in July of 1994, that the truth surfaced through the conscience and perhaps the vengeful bitterness of a man named Leroy Wetzel. After being taken into custody in Pennsylvania, Leroy, the ex-husband of Patricia's sister, Sheila, revealed in a series of handwritten letters that he had been hired by the two sisters to murder Fred in exchange for $30,000. He described the grim efficiency of the night, detailing how he had faked a car breakdown on Gallimore Dairy Road, lured Fred into a trap, and then shot him in the back as he attempted to flee. The motive was as pathetic as it was monstrous, as Patricia sought to secure a large life insurance payout to maintain her lavish lifestyle and her obsession with her birds, while Leroy carried out the hit under the false promise of payment. When the evidence of phone records and the confession finally allowed investigators to arrest the sisters, the courtroom became the stage for a final, harrowing reckoning where Leroy reenacted the murder, shaking and trembling as he held a stapler in place of the weapon. Despite the defense team's desperate attempts to frame the killing as a failed blackmail plot gone wrong, the jury saw through the facade, convicting Patricia Brown of first-degree murder and sentencing her to life in prison, where she eventually died in 2002. The case stands as a tragic testament to the destruction of lives over nothing more than vanity and greed, leaving behind the memory of a man, Fred Brown, who was simply too good for the darkness that ultimately consumed his world. As a journalist who has spent a lifetime observing the ebb and flow of human societies, I often filter global events through the enduring values of our culture, a deep appreciation for social solidarity, a grounded connection to reality, and the pursuit of a balanced, moderate life. When a community forgets these principles, prioritizing boundless material wealth over spiritual peace, the consequences can be devastating, such as the tragic case that unfolded in Arlington, Texas, in the summer of 2012, a story that demands not just our attention, but our profound empathy and psychological reflection. The illusion of boundless prosperity. In the year 2000, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, a devoted married couple, left their homeland of Vietnam to seek the American dream in the United States. Like many immigrants who arrived during the 80s and 90s, they brought with them a profound work ethic and a deep love for their 3 children and growing grandchildren. They settled in Arlington, a city known for its diverse communities and strong cultural heritage, and established a commercial garment business. For nearly a decade, through relentless labor, they found success, even securing lucrative contracts with major corporations. However, life is rarely a continuous ascent. By the year 2011, their fortunes had turned. The major contracts vanished, and their business began to collapse under mounting debt. It is here that we must pause and reflect on the psychological burden placed upon individuals who tie their entire sense of worth to material success. Instead of finding solace in their family, downscaling their lives, and finding peace and moderation, the family succumbed to a profound, paralyzing fear of failure. Driven by desperation, they abandoned rational solutions and turned to ancient superstitions, believing a spiritual curse was responsible for their financial ruin. The descent into predatory mysticism, encouraged by her son-in-law, a 38-year-old man named Chow Tran, who acted as the face of the family business. Hong Lee sought the help of a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. Her name was Daphne Wright, a 44-year-old woman who advertised her ability to remove curses and restore good fortune. Daphne Wright is a stark representation of unchecked greed. Psychologically, she operated as a predator, possessing a chilling ability to identify and exploit the vulnerabilities of desperate people. She demanded exorbitant fees for her rituals, pushing the family into a staggering debt of roughly $250,000 to $280,000. Daphne did not offer healing. She offered a psychological prison, manipulating the family's deep-seated fears until they were entirely under her control. When the family inevitably could not pay this massive, fabricated debt, the situation turned fatal. Daphne Wright, devoid of empathy, sought to collect her money by targeting the family's life insurance policies, which were valued at over $1 million. A morning of unimaginable sorrow. On the 10th of June, 2012, at 29 minutes past 7 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a call from Chow Tran. He requested a welfare check on his in-laws, claiming the family was too terrified to enter the apartment after seeing signs of a disturbance. Responding officers, some with over 21 years of experience, entered the home to find a stage scene designed to look like a robbery committed by a local street faction. There was a blue cloth wrapped around a bottle, herbal narcotics, and crushed medication scattered about. Tragically, inside the bedroom closet, officers discovered Long, in his 70s, and his wife Hong. They had been forcibly restrained and had suffered a fatal, merciless assault. The profound loss of this gentle, hard-working couple deeply rattled the local community. To protect the dignity of the victims and the sensibilities of the public, the plot culminated in a series of trials in the year 2019. The prosecution presented a powerful case, detailing the manipulation, the financial desperation, and the tragic consequences of a trust misplaced in the supernatural. Daphne Wright was ultimately convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that justice was served for the gentle couple who had traveled so far in search of a peaceful life. The legacy of Long, Gwen, and Hong Lu remained one of love, dedication, and the enduring strength of family. Though their lives were cut short, the memory of their warmth, their hard work, and the sacrifices they made to build a better future for their children continued to inspire those who knew them, a testament to the quiet dignity of the human spirit in the face of life's greatest challenges. The morning of June 10th, 2012, began with a heavy, unyielding silence over the city of Arlington, Texas, in the quiet residential neighborhoods. The early summer heat was already beginning to rise from the asphalt, promising a sweltering day. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, a phone rang in the emergency dispatch center, shattering the routine calm of the early shift. The caller was a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice, trembling with anxiety he could barely contain, came through the line asking for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. He struggled to find the words, spelling out the names for the dispatcher. His father-in-law was Long Nguyen, a man in his early 70s, and his mother-in-law was Hong Lu. Chow explained to the dispatcher that his wife and his teenage son had gone to the apartment to check on them, only to find a window wide open and things inside looking completely out of place. Too terrified to step across the threshold into the unknown, the family huddled outside, waiting desperately for the arrival of the police. When the responding officers arrived at the suburban apartment complex, they immediately sensed that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was rare to receive such requests so early in the morning, and seeing an entire family standing outside, visibly shaken and refusing to enter their own relative's home, set off silent alarms in the minds of the patrolmen. Officer Weller was one of the first to step inside the apartment. The front door gave way to a scene of quiet chaos. The living room was in complete disarray, showing all the classic, disturbing signs of a burglary. Drawers were pulled out, personal belongings were scattered across the floor, and compact discs were strewn about. Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing off the walls, but only silence answered him. He checked the kitchen, the dining area, and the bathroom, finding them completely empty. The only remaining space was the master bedroom. Officer Weller stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the dimness. At first glance, the bedroom appeared empty of people, though the air felt heavy and thick. Convinced that perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone out for an early morning walk to escape the summer heat, Weller turned to leave. But as he turned his flashlight toward the door, Something caught his eye. Near a very small closet in the corner of the room, there were distinct, dark hand smudges on the wall. It looked as though someone had desperately clung to the drywall, fighting to hold their ground. A cold instinct, honed by years of service, told Weller that he had to open that closet door. He hesitated for a single, fleeting second, praying that his instincts were wrong. Then he reached out and pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space of the closet lay Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were bound hand and foot with heavy gray duct tape, their heads and mouths covered in layers of the same thick adhesive. The violence of the scene was overwhelming. Weller, despite his 14 years of experience in law enforcement, felt a wave of profound shock wash over him. He walked out of the bedroom into the middle of the living room, completely unable to speak or even use his radio for several long moments. When he finally found his voice, he called for backup, a supervisor, and the crime scene unit. The seasoned homicide detectives who arrived soon after, including investigators with over 21 years on the force, were equally shaken. It was clear that the gentle elderly couple had been subjected to an unspeakable act of violence, beaten with a blunt object that left terrible marks upon their foreheads. Yet, as the medical examiner would later reveal, it was not the blunt force trauma that took their lives. In an act of pure, chilling cruelty, the attackers had wrapped 25 feet of duct tape around Hong Lee's face and 10 feet around Long Nguyen's face, leaving them to suffocate slowly in the dark. It was a deeply personal, targeted crime, far too brutal to be a simple robbery gone wrong. To the detectives, however, some of the evidence left behind seemed almost too convenient. On the coffee table lay a plate of crushed prescription pills, alongside a half-smoked marijuana cigarette. More strikingly, a light blue bandana was carefully wrapped around a beer bottle, left in plain sight like a calling card. To an outsider, these clues pointed directly to the active Vietnamese youth gangs known to operate in the region, groups that sometimes extorted local businesses. But experienced detectives knew that real gang members rarely left their signature colors so neatly, arranged at the scene of a capital crime. It felt staged, an elaborate theatrical production designed to lead the police down a false path. Long Nguyen and Hong, who had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, seeking to build a stable, prosperous life for their 3 children and grandchildren. They were a beloved, gentle couple who had established a commercial sewing business in Arlington, Texas, a city known for its vibrant and hard-working Vietnamese community. To bridge the language barrier, they relied heavily on their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who spoke fluent English and became the public face of the business, coordinating with major commercial clients. For nearly a decade, the family thrived, even securing a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant. But by the year 2011, their good fortune began to slip away. The contract was lost, revenues plummeted, and the business was pushed to the brink of bankruptcy. Desperate to save their livelihood and protect their family legacy, the elderly couple turned to the deep-rooted spiritual traditions of their homeland. In Vietnamese culture, many believe in seeking the guidance of spiritual advisors or mystics during times of severe crisis, such as financial ruin or legal trouble, to lift perceived curses and restore harmony. Searching through a local Vietnamese language newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, advertised extraordinary spiritual powers, claiming she could both place and remove powerful curses, believing she was the key to restoring their prosperity. Chow made the long drive to Houston for a consultation. Daphne performed elaborate rituals, filling the family with renewed hope. Yet, instead of bringing good fortune, this connection dragged the family into a deep, inescapable dark hole. Over the course of a single year, Daphne Wright began running services for the family on credit. She claimed that the curses on their business were exceptionally stubborn, requiring increasingly complex and expensive rituals, the debt ballooned rapidly, reaching an astronomical sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. The family, already struggling to survive, had absolutely no way to pay. As detectives dug deeper into the family's financial affairs following the murders, they made a startling discovery. The elderly couple held substantial life insurance policies, totaling at least $850,000, with the primary beneficiary being none other than their son-in-law, Chow Tran. When questioned about this, Chow was highly cooperative, explaining that the policies were intended to ensure the survival of the family's sewing business in the event of a tragedy. He provided a seamless, airtight alibi for himself and the rest of the family for the night of the murders, explaining they had been celebrating Long's birthday and playing cards until late in the evening. With no matching DNA or fingerprints in national databases, the case slowly went cold. For over 2 years, investigators worked tirelessly but found no active leads, leaving the family and the community in a state of unresolved grief. The breakthrough finally came in the year 2015, triggered by an entirely unrelated and almost absurd crime. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for stealing a horse in Houston, a felony offense in the state of Texas. Because Willie had been a minor of 16 years at the time of the murders in 2012, his DNA had never been entered into the national database. But now, as an adult with felony conviction, his genetic profile was uploaded, triggering an immediate, exact match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene. When brought in for questioning, Willie quickly broke down under the weight of the evidence. He confessed that he had not acted alone. He had been recruited by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man with no prior criminal record, who was desperately struggling to make ends meet after being laid off from his job. Bobby, in turn, confessed that they had been hired to commit the crime by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Daphne had promised Bobby $10,000 to carry out the hit, driven by a cold, relentless greed to collect the massive debt she was owed. In a shocking twist, Bobby revealed to investigators that Daphne had obtained the keys to the elderly couple's apartment directly from Chow Tran. According to the plot, the murders were designed to look like a gang robbery, allowing Chow and his wife to collect a massive life insurance payout and finally settle their debts with the spiritual mystic. Chow later claimed to investigators that his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, had willingly offered her own life as a sacrifice to save the family from Daphne's spiritual wrath, a claim the detectives found completely absurd and offensive. To secure a conviction against the true mastermind of the operation, prosecutors made a difficult choice. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, detailed testimony against Daphne Wright, Bobby Guillory, and Willie Guillory. In August of 2019, the case finally went to trial. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a manipulative, greedy puppet master who used psychological terror and ancient superstitions to control his mind and dictate his family's actions. The defense argued fiercely that Chow was the true instigator, pointing out that the entire $850,000 in insurance money had ended up in his pocket, with no paper trail proving the existence of the massive spiritual debt. Ultimately, the jury delivered its verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to the ultimate punishment of life in prison without the possibility of parole, joining Bobby and Willie Guillory behind bars. Though the detectives took comfort in knowing that the physical killers and the mastermind were brought to justice, a quiet sense of injustice remained, knowing that Chow Tran walked free. Yet, as those who worked the case reflected on the long journey, they remained hopeful that the truth, having finally been dragged into the light, in the heart of Texas, where the bluebonnets bloom under an endless sky and the warmth of the community matches the summer heat, a remarkable family sought to build a sanctuary of hope and prosperity. Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu had traveled across the vast ocean from Vietnam in the year 2000, carrying nothing but their cherished traditions, a deep devotion to one another, and an unwavering belief in the American dream. They settled in Arlington, a vibrant city within Tarrant County known for its rich tapestry of cultures and a bustling, supportive Vietnamese community that had flourished since the late 1970s. For Long and Hong, this new home was a canvas of endless possibilities. Together with their 3 children and their extended family, they established a commercial sewing business, pouring their hearts and souls into every stitch, seam, and fabric pattern. To bridge the gap between their heritage and their new environment, they relied heavily on their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a 38-year-old immigrant who possessed a natural charm and spoke fluent English. Chow became the friendly face of the enterprise, negotiating with contractors, managing local accounts, and presenting their exquisite craftsmanship to the wider business world. For nearly a decade, the sewing business thrived, culminating in a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a globally recognized commercial giant. Their modest workshop hummed with the cheerful sounds of sewing machines, light-hearted family chatter, and the sweet aroma of traditional tea. However, as the global economy shifted, the family faced unexpected hurdles. By the year 2011, the major contracts began to dwindle, and the hum of the sewing machines grew quieter. The family found themselves facing financial strain, a challenge that tested their resilience but could not dampen their love for one another. In moments of uncertainty, people often look to their deepest cultural roots for comfort and guidance. For Long and Hong, their heritage was rich with spiritual traditions, ancestral respect, and the age-old practice of seeking blessings for harmony and prosperity. They believed that a string of misfortune could be lifted through proper spiritual alignment and guidance. Searching for a solution to restore their business to its former glory, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement in a local Vietnamese newspaper for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in the city of Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, promised to lift heavy burdens, remove obstacles, and restore good fortune to those in distress. Encouraged by the prospect of a brighter future, Chow made contact with her and arranged a consultation at her Houston residence. Initially, the family felt a renewed sense of hope. Daphne performed intricate rituals designed to invite success back into their lives. Yet, as the months passed, the economic situation remained stagnant, and the financial arrangement with Daphne began to spiral out of control. Unknown to the gentle elderly couple, a web of massive debts and hidden motives was quietly being spun around them. The turning point came on a warm morning on June 10, 2012. At 7:29 in the morning, the Arlington Police Department received a call from a distressed Chow Tran, requesting a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. He explained that his family had gathered outside the residence and noticed an open window and signs of disarray inside. Officer Weller, a seasoned officer with 14 years of experience, was the first to arrive on the scene. The quiet neighborhood stood in stark contrast to the growing anxiety of the family waiting outside. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller observed a home that appeared to have been ransacked, resembling a burglary. Determined to find the elderly couple and ensure their safety, he searched the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, finding them empty. Turning back toward the exit of the master bedroom, his flashlight illuminated hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. With a cautious heart, he opened the door and discovered the tragic scene. Long and Hong had been bound and hidden away, having succumbed to a cruel and senseless act of violence. The loss of this kind-hearted, generous couple, who had never harmed anyone and were deeply loved by their neighbors, sent shockwaves through the entire Arlington community. Arlington homicide detectives, including Detective Stewart, immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. In the master bedroom and living room, investigators discovered items that seemed intended to paint a specific picture: a blue bandana wrapped around a glass bottle, scattered pills, and a partially burned cigarette. To the experienced detectives, these clues appeared almost too deliberate, as if someone had meticulously staged the scene to make it look like local gang activity. As the detectives dug deeper, they discovered a significant life insurance policy totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran listed as a major beneficiary. When questioned, Chow explained that the policy was designed to protect and sustain the family business in the event of an untimely tragedy. He and his family provided solid accounts of their whereabouts on the night of the incident, leaving the police with no immediate physical evidence to connect anyone to the crime. For over 2 years, despite conducting dozens of interviews and collecting numerous biological samples, the case remained unresolved, sitting quietly on the detectives' desks as a solemn reminder of a search for justice. In the autumn of 2015, a sudden breakthrough illuminated the cold case. A young man named Willie Guillory, who had recently reached adulthood, was arrested in Houston on a felony charge involving the theft of a horse. Because a felony conviction requires the submission of a biological profile to the national database, Willie's details were entered into the system for the first time. Instantly, a match was found linking him directly to the cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene from 2012. When brought in for questioning, the weight of the truth proved too heavy for the young man to bear. Willie broke down and confessed, explaining that when he was 16 years old, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had pressured him into assisting with a stage burglary in Arlington. Bobby had been given a key to the apartment to gain easy access. Willie revealed that the entire plot had been orchestrated by Daphne Wright, who had grown increasingly furious over unpaid debts that had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000. With this crucial information, detectives arrested Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas, in December of 2015. Facing the reality of the evidence, Bobby confessed to his role, admitting he had been promised $10,000 by Daphne, a woman he described as a ruthless spiritual creditor who would stop at nothing to claim what she believed she was owed. The investigation soon shifted entirely toward Daphne Wright. In August of 2016, police executed a search warrant at her Houston home, discovering detailed financial ledgers outlining exorbitant fees for her spiritual services. The evidence painted a clear picture of a master manipulator who exploited the cultural beliefs and financial vulnerabilities of her clients. To secure a conviction against the mastermind of the plot, prosecutors offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full and truthful testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand, describing how the family had fallen under Daphne's psychological control, believing she possessed immense spiritual powers that could harm them if they failed to pay. The defense argued that Chow was a complicit partner who sought to benefit from the insurance payout, but the jury ultimately focused on the overwhelming evidence against Daphne. In September of 2019, the jury delivered its verdict, convicting Daphne Wright of capital murder. She was sentenced to spend the remainder of her days in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she could never again exploit or harm another family. Though the journey to justice was long and filled with complex revelations, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu remains a testament to the enduring power of love, hard work, and the strong bonds of community that stood together to seek the truth. The story serves as a profound reminder of the importance of protecting the vulnerable, cherishing family, and trusting that light will always find a way to dispel the deepest shadows. The morning sun of June 10th, 2012, rose over Arlington, Texas, casting a pale, amber glow across the quiet suburban landscape. It was a Sunday, a day usually reserved for rest, family gatherings, and the gentle hum of lawnmowers. But at 7:29 in the morning, The calm was shattered by a phone call to the emergency dispatchers. On the other end of the line was Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant whose voice trembled with a mixture of anxiety and deep-seated dread. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. The dispatcher, sensing the rising panic in the man's voice, calmly asked their names. Noting down the spelling of Long Nguyen, a man in his early 70s, Chow explained that his family had gathered outside the apartment, worried because no one was answering the door, and they had noticed an open window. His teenage son had gone up to knock, but only silence greeted him. Too terrified to step inside themselves, the family waited on the pavement, looking up at the quiet building, hoping against hope that their fears were groundless. Within minutes, Officer Weller, a seasoned patroller with 14 years of experience, arrived at the scene. He immediately recognized that this was not a typical welfare check. An entire extended family stood outside the apartment complex in the early hours of the morning, their faces drawn with worry. Upon entering the residence, Officer Weller was met with the classic signs of a burglary. The living room was in disarray. Drawers were pulled out and items were scattered across the floor. He called out, his voice echoing in the empty space, but received no reply. He checked the kitchen and the bathroom, finding them empty. Finally, he approached the bedroom. At first glance, the room seemed unoccupied, and he felt a brief wave of relief, thinking the elderly couple had simply gone out for an early morning walk. But as he turned to leave, his flashlight caught hand smudges on the wall next to a very small closet. A sudden, instinctual hesitation gripped him. Every fiber of his being warned him of what might lie behind that door, yet his duty compelled him to reach out and turn the handle. When the closet door swung open, the relief evaporated. Inside lay Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, their heads and mouths covered, showing clear signs of violent struggle. It was a sight that shook the veteran officer to his core. In a state of profound shock, he walked out of the bedroom into the middle of the living room, unable to speak or even use his radio for several long moments. When he finally regained his composure, he requested a supervisor in the crime scene unit. Soon, Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years on the force, arrived to take charge of the scene. Even for him, the level of violence was deeply unsettling. The apartment had been ransacked, with compact discs and furniture thrown about, suggesting a robbery. Yet, the extreme physical trauma suffered by the quiet, beloved elderly couple pointed to something far more sinister and personal. Neighbors and community members quickly gathered, expressing their disbelief. Long and Hong were known as a sweet, hard-working, and generous couple who had never bothered anyone and had no known enemies. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them their rich heritage and their beloved family. They settled in Arlington, a city in Tarrant County known for its vibrant and diverse cultural mix, including a large and supportive Vietnamese community. Like many who arrived after the fall of Saigon in 1975, they sought to build a legacy for their children and grandchildren. Long and Hong established a commercial sewing business, enlisting the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who spoke fluent English and became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and securing lucrative accounts, including a contract with a famous entertainment corporation. However, by the year 2011, their fortunes had taken a sharp downward turn. The loss of their major contracts threw the business into financial jeopardy. In their desperation, the family turned to traditional beliefs, hoping to find a spiritual solution to their mounting difficulties. In Vietnamese culture, it is not uncommon to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor during times of severe crisis, such as impending bankruptcy. Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement in a local newspaper for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of Houston, some 250 miles away. She claimed to possess the power to lift curses and bring good fortune. Hoping to save their business, Chow traveled to Houston to meet with Daphne. She performed rituals that temporarily restored their hope, but as the months passed, the financial situation did not improve. Instead, the family fell deeper into debt, not just to their business creditors, but to Daphne herself. She charged exorbitant fees for her services, and because the family could not pay, she extended them credit. Over time, this debt ballooned to an astronomical sum between $250,000 and $280,000. Back at the crime scene in 2012, detectives began to notice details that did not align with a simple robbery. A beer bottle wrapped in a light blue bandana had been left on a table, alongside crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. While these items initially suggested the involvement of local youth gangs, investigators grew skeptical. The scene felt too perfectly arranged, almost as if it had been staged to mislead them. They collected the physical evidence, including the marijuana cigarette, hoping that deoxyribonucleic acid testing would eventually provide a breakthrough, though the initial searches of the National Genetic Database yielded no matches. As the investigation continued, Detective Stewart learned that the victims had a life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as one of the primary beneficiaries. When questioned, Chow explained that the policy was intended to ensure the continuity of the family business. He and his family provided airtight alibis for the night of the murders, explaining that they had been celebrating Long's birthday at a family gathering until 10:30 in the evening. With no immediate forensic matches and no definitive evidence linking anyone to the crime, the case slowly went cold, remaining unresolved for over 3 years. The breakthrough finally came in October of 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory, who was 16 years old at the time of the murders, was arrested for a felony horse theft in Houston because he was now an adult with a felony charge. His genetic profile was entered into the national database. A routine comparison revealed a perfect match between Willie's genetic material and the residue found on the marijuana cigarette left at the crime scene. When confronted by Arlington detectives, Willie broke down and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. His uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man with no prior criminal history, had recruited him for the job. Bobby, who was facing severe financial distress in 2012, had been offered $10,000 by Daphne Wright to carry out the deed. Daphne, desperate to collect the money she believed she was owed, had learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She believed that by eliminating the elderly couple, Chow and his wife would receive the payout and finally settle their massive debt with her. According to Bobby's subsequent confession, Daphne had provided him with a key to the apartment, which he claimed to have obtained directly from Chow Tran. On the night of June 9, 2012, Bobby and Willie drove to Arlington, entered the apartment, staged a burglary with the gang-related props, and waited for the couple to return. When Long and Hong walked through the door, the tragic confrontation occurred, resulting in their untimely deaths. Armed with these confessions, detectives arrested Daphne Wright at her Houston home in August of 2016. A search of her residence uncovered detailed financial ledgers showing that she regularly charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services, while Daphne remained cold and uncooperative, demanding her lawyer. Prosecutors began to piece together the full scope of the conspiracy. In exchange for his full testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie, Chow Tran was offered immunity from prosecution. He portrayed Daphne as a manipulative and greedy figure who exerted an overwhelming psychological control over his family, claiming they were terrified of the spiritual curses she might place on them if they failed to pay. Chow even claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to satisfy Daphne, a claim that investigators found hard to believe. suspecting instead that financial gain was a powerful motivator for all involved. The trial of Daphne Wright commenced on August 26, 2019. Despite the defense's efforts to paint Chow Tran as an untrustworthy accomplice who walked away with the insurance money, the jury found Daphne guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy, although the detectives expressed lingering frustration that Chow Tran did not face criminal charges due to his immunity agreement. They found solace in the fact that the truth had finally been brought to light, proving that even the most carefully hidden secrets will eventually be revealed. The morning sun of Texas always had a way of rising with intense, amber brilliance, casting long and quiet shadows across the sprawling suburban landscapes of Arlington. It was a city of unexpected contrasts, where wide paved roads stretched past modern commercial centers and quiet apartment complexes, nestled under the shade of massive oak trees. Here, thousands of miles away from their original home, a vibrant community of Vietnamese immigrants had spent decades weaving their own unique threads into the colorful fabric of the American dream. Among them were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu, an endearing elderly couple whose lives were defined by hard work, deep devotion to their family, and an unwavering commitment to the traditions of their homeland. For more than 20 years, Detective Stewart had walked the beat of the city. He was a veteran of the police force, a man whose quiet demeanor and sharp eyes had seen the absolute best and the absolute worst of human nature. Having spent 21 years in the homicide division, he was no stranger to the darkness that could sometimes seep into the corners of quiet neighborhoods. Yet, nothing in his more than 2 decades of service could prepare him for the silent weight that hung in the air on that warm summer morning of June 10th, 2012. It began at precisely 7:29 in the morning when the quiet hum of the emergency dispatch center was interrupted by a call. The voice on the other end belonged to Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who sounded increasingly breathless and consumed by a growing sense of dread. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. The dispatcher, trained to remain calm in the face of rising panic, gently asked for the names of the residents. Chow, his voice trembling as he spoke from outside the apartment complex, explained that his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen and was currently in his early 70s. He described how he, his wife, and his teenage son had gone to the apartment to check on them after being unable to reach them by phone. The family had gathered in the parking lot, their anxiety mounting with every passing minute. Chow had sent his young son to knock loudly on the heavy wooden front door, but there had been no response. No footsteps echoed from within. No familiar voices welcomed them. As the family stood outside, they noticed something that made their hearts sink further. One of the apartment windows was slightly open, and the blinds inside were skewed in a way that suggested sudden movement. Things simply did not look right. Too terrified to cross the threshold and confront whatever lay inside, they waited anxiously on the pavement, praying for the sound of approaching sirens. Officer Weller was the first to arrive on the scene. With 14 years of experience on the force, he was accustomed to routine welfare checks, which usually ended with a simple misunderstanding or an elderly resident who had merely misplaced their keys. But as he pulled up to the apartment complex, he immediately sensed that this situation was different. It was unusually early in the morning for such a request, and seeing an entire extended family standing together in the parking lot, their faces pale with worry, struck him as highly unconventional. Stepping cautiously through the open window and into the apartment, Officer Weller called out into quiet space. His voice bounced off the walls, met only by an eerie, heavy silence. The living room was in complete disarray, presenting all the classic, telltale signs of a burglary. Drawers were pulled open, personal belongings were scattered across the floor, and a shelf of compact discs had been completely ransacked. He checked the kitchen and the bathroom, finding both empty. The only room left to inspect was the master bedroom. He pushed the bedroom door open. At first glance, the room appeared vacant. He did not notice anything immediately unusual about the state of the furniture, as his mind was solely focused on finding the family and ensuring their safety. He reasoned that perhaps they had simply gone out for an early morning walk to enjoy the cool air before the Texas heat became too oppressive. Relieved, Weller turned around to leave the room. But as he swung his flashlight toward the door, the beam of light caught a series of dark hand smudges on the pale wall directly next to a small closet. He hesitated. A cold prickle of instinct warned him that something profound and tragic lay behind that wooden door. Taking a deep, steadying breath, he reached out and opened the closet. Inside, crumpled in the narrow space, were Long and Hong. They had been bound tightly with silver duct tape, their heads and mouths covered extensively. There was no breath left in them. In that singular, devastating second, Weller knew they were gone. The sheer brutality of the scene left the seasoned officer in a state of profound shock. He walked out of the bedroom and into the center of the living room, unable to speak, unable to even grasp his radio to call for backup. He simply stood there, trying to process the gravity of what he had just witnessed. Finally, regaining his composure, he reached for his radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. When Detective Stewart and the homicide team arrived, they were equally stunned. The evidence suggested a violent struggle that had begun the very moment the elderly couple walked through their own front door. There was blood on the carpet, on the couch, on the table, and on the walls. It was a scene of immense tragedy, yet it was also strangely contradictory. On the coffee table sat a plate with crushed prescription pills, arranged as if someone had intended to snort them, along with discarded marijuana cigarette. Wrapped around a glass beer bottle nearby was a light blue bandana. To an outsider, these items point-blank suggested the work of an active local street gang. In those years, Arlington had seen its share of gang activity, and the blue bandana was a known color associated with specific groups. However, Detective Stewart's 21 years of experience made him inherently skeptical. Sometimes, a crime scene appeared too perfect, too staged to be true. While the physical evidence of a robbery was present, the level of violence directed at an endearing, harmless elderly couple seemed deeply personal. Long and Hong were widely regarded as incredibly sweet, generous, and hard-working people who had no known enemies in the community. Everyone who knew them loved them. It made no sense for a random gang to target them with such specific, concentrated malice. To understand how they had arrived at this tragic point, the detectives began to piece together the history of the Nguyen family. Long and Hong had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a deep respect for their cultural heritage and a desire to build a prosperous legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren. They settled in Arlington, a city home to a large, close-knit Vietnamese community that had flourished since the first major wave of immigration. Following the fall of Saigon in 1975, the couple had started a commercial sewing business, employing their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to manage the daily operations. Because Chow spoke the most fluent English, he became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and securing prominent manufacturing deals. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off handsomely, culminating in a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major commercial giant, including well-known brands like Disney. They were living the quintessential American dream. But by the year 2011, their good fortune began to slip away. They lost their major commercial contracts, and the sewing business began to decline rapidly, threatening to dismantle everything they had built. Desperate to save their livelihood and steeped in the traditional beliefs of their homeland, the family sought a spiritual solution. In Vietnamese culture, as in many Asian traditions, it was common to believe in spiritual advisors who could perform rituals to bring good luck. protect wealth, and lift perceived curses during times of extreme financial or personal hardship. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston. Some 250 miles away, the woman, named Daphne Wright, advertised herself as a powerful mystic who could remove bad curses and bring immense good fortune to those in need. Encouraged by Hong, Chow contacted Daphne and traveled to Houston for a consultation. After she performed an initial ritual, the family felt a renewed sense of hope, believing their business would soon recover. Yet, a year later, that hope had turned into a nightmare. Following the discovery of the bodies, the investigation took a complex turn. An autopsy revealed that while the couple had suffered blunt force trauma to their heads, the actual cause of death was suffocation. Hong's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape and Long's in 10 feet. The sheer coldness of the act convinced Detective Stewart that this was not a simple robbery gone wrong. The primary intent of the perpetrators had been to ensure the victims did not survive. A few days into the investigation, a routine phone call from an insurance company changed the trajectory of the case. The representative informed Detective Stewart that Long and Hong carried a massive life insurance policy worth at least $1 million. When the detective inquired about the beneficiaries, the answer was startling. The primary beneficiary was none other than Chow Tran. When brought in for questioning, Chow maintained a calm and cooperative demeanor. He explained that the policy was intended to ensure the continuity of the commercial sewing business. In the event of a tragedy, he provided a detailed, airtight alibi for the night of the murders, explaining that the entire family had been celebrating Long's birthday at a party until 10 in the evening, after which the elderly couple had been driven home by another relative. Genetic testing and fingerprint analysis of the family members yielded no matches to the genetic material recovered from the marijuana cigarette left at the crime scene. With no matches and combined DNA index system, the case eventually went cold, remaining unsolved for 3 long years. Then, in October of 2015, a bizarre turn of events breathed new life into the investigation. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for a felony involving the theft of a horse, because he had been a 16-year-old minor with no prior adult felony convictions at the time of the murders in 2012. His genetic profile had never been entered into the national database. But now, as an adult convicted of felony, his profile was officially uploaded, triggering an immediate and perfect match to the marijuana cigarette found on the coffee table in Arlington. When brought in for questioning, Willie initially denied ever being in Arlington, but when presented with the undeniable scientific accuracy of the genetic evidence, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. He had been led by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 49-year-old man with no prior criminal record who had been struggling financially after being laid off from his job. According to Willie, on the night of June 9, 2012, his uncle had driven them 3 hours north to Arlington. Bobby possessed a key to the apartment, which allowed them to enter without forcing the lock. Following a specific plan, they scattered personal items to stage a burglary, leaving behind the beer bottle, the blue bandana, and the crushed pills to mimic gang activity. When Long and Hong returned home, a struggle ensued. Bobby used a blunt object to incapacitate them, and together they bound the couple with duct tape and placed them in the bedroom closet before fleeing back to Houston. When asked why they had targeted the specific couple, Willie revealed a shocking truth. It was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Bobby had met Daphne through a mutual acquaintance, and knowing his desperate financial situation, she had offered him $10,000 to eliminate the couple. As the detectives dug deeper, they discovered that Daphne Wright operated as a spiritual loan shark. Over the course of a year, Chow Tran and Hong Lu had poured massive sums of money into her rituals, running up an astronomical debt of between $250,000 and $280,000 on credit. When the business failed to recover, Daphne demanded payment, but the family simply did not have the funds. Learning of the substantial life insurance policies, Daphne allegedly devised a plan to collect on the debt by orchestrating the deaths of the policyholders, ensuring that Chow would receive the payout and subsequently clear his financial obligations to her. Bobby Guillory claimed that Daphne had obtained the key to the apartment directly from Chow Tran. Armed with this information, detectives traveled to Houston to arrest Daphne Wright. Inside her home, they discovered detailed ledgers showing that she regularly charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services. While her husband maintained her innocence, Daphne remained cold and uncooperative, immediately requesting her legal counsel. In an effort to secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors offered Chow Tran a deal of immunity in exchange for his full and honest testimony. Chow painted a picture of a woman who held an immense, terrifying psychological grip over his family. He claimed that he and his mother-in-law were so terrified of Daphne's supposed spiritual powers that they believed she could place a devastating curse on their entire lineage if they did not pay. In a bizarre twist, Chow claimed that Hong had voluntarily offered to sacrifice her own life so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt, a claim that investigators viewed with extreme skepticism. In August of 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright commenced. Chow took the stand, delivering a powerful and emotional testimony that detailed how Daphne's greed had driven her to orchestrate the demise of his in-laws. Despite the defense's efforts to portray Chow as an untrustworthy opportunist who had pocketed the remaining $850,000 of the insurance payout, the jury ultimately found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Detective Stewart felt a sense of relief that the perpetrators of the physical crime and their coordinator were behind bars. The fact that Chow Tran walked away free under the immunity agreement remained a bittersweet reality. Yet, as he looked out over the quiet streets of Arlington, he held on to the enduring belief that justice, in its own time and through its own mysterious ways, would eventually find its balance, and that the memory of Long and Hong would forever be cherished by the community they had helped to build. The morning sun over the vast skies of Arlington, Texas, always seemed to bring with it a sense of quiet promise, casting a warm, golden glow over the neat rows of suburban brick homes, the leafy green parks, and the bustling commercial districts. It was a place where dreams were built with steady hands, quiet determination, and the enduring strength of family. For decades, the city had welcomed people from all corners of the world, creating a rich and colorful tapestry of cultures, languages, and shared hopes. Among those who had sought a new beginning in this vibrant landscape were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Le. They were an elderly couple whose lives were a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the quiet pursuit of the American dream. In the year 2000, Long and Hong had made the monumental decision to leave their homeland of Vietnam, carrying with them little more than their treasured traditions, a few cherished family heirlooms, and an unwavering commitment to build a better future for their 3 children and grandchildren. They were gentle souls, deeply respected by everyone who knew them. Long was a man of quiet dignity, with kind eyes that had seen the passage of many decades and a soft smile that could instantly put anyone at ease. Hong was the heart of the family, a woman of warmth, endless energy, and a generous spirit that expressed itself through the delicious, steaming bowls of traditional Vietnamese soup she prepared for her family and neighbors. Upon arriving in Texas, they did what they had always done when faced with challenges. They rolled up their sleeves and went to work. Together with their family, they established a small commercial sewing business, transforming rolls of vibrant fabrics, threads, and buttons into beautiful garments. It was a modest enterprise at first, operating out of a small workspace filled with a rhythmic, comforting hum of sewing machines to help them navigate the complex world of American commerce. They relied heavily on their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a 38-year-old immigrant who possessed a strong command of the English language. Chow became the public face of the business, the bridge between the quiet, traditional world of Long and Hong and the fast-paced, modern market of Texas contractors. For nearly a decade, their dedication bore sweet fruit. The business expanded, and their reputation for high-quality craftsmanship spread. The pinnacle of their success arrived when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a world-renowned commercial giant, producing beautiful items that would carry the magic of Disney to families across the globe. For a time, it seemed that their hard work had secured the legacy they had dreamed of, a stable, prosperous future for their children and the generations to follow. However, the tides of fortune are notoriously fickle, and by the year 2011, the bright skies began to cloud over. The vital contract with the commercial giant was lost, and the steady stream of orders dwindled to a slow trickle. The rhythmic hum of the sewing machines, once a symbol of abundance, now felt like a ticking clock, marking the steady decline of their life savings. The family found themselves trapped in a dense fog of financial stress, watching helplessly as the business they had poured their souls into began to slip away. In times of deep trouble, human beings often look backward to find a path forward, searching for comfort in the ancient beliefs of their ancestors. In the traditional folklore of their homeland, there existed a deep-seated belief in the delicate balance of spiritual forces. For thousands of years, people believed that prosperity and misfortune were governed not just by hard work, but by the favor of spiritual guardians. When a family faced a sudden, inexplicable string of bad luck, it was often attributed to a spiritual curse, a shadow cast upon their lives that could only be lifted by those who possessed a rare and mystical knowledge of the spiritual world. It was during a particularly dark afternoon, as they sat around the kitchen table whispering about impending bankruptcy, that Chow Tran and his mother-in-law Hong turned to the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper. Amidst the local advertisements and community news, a small notice caught their eye. It was an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out her home in Houston, some 250 miles away. The advertisement promised absolute solutions to life's most devastating challenges. It claimed that Daphne possessed the power to lift the heaviest of curses, to protect families from misfortune, and to guide lost souls back to the path of wealth and harmony. To the desperate family, this advertisement appeared as a beacon of pure hope. Hong, driven by a fierce desire to protect her children and save the legacy they had built, urged Chow to make contact with this mysterious savior. Chow agreed, reaching out to Daphne and scheduling a consultation at her home in Houston. He drove down the long, flat highway to the coastal city, his heart heavy with worry but fluttering with anticipation. When Chow arrived, he was introduced to a world of ancient rituals, burning incense, and whispered prayers. Daphne Wright was a woman of commanding presence, 44 years old, with sharp, observant eyes and a voice that carried an air of absolute authority. She listened to Chow's troubles, nodded knowingly, and assured him that the failure of their business was indeed the result of a powerful, negative spiritual influence. She agreed to perform a series of sacred rituals to cleanse the family of this dark shadow and restore their good fortune. Returning to Arlington, Chow and Hong felt a profound sense of relief. They believed with all their hearts that their spiritual savior had intervened, and that it was only a matter of time before the sewing machines hummed with prosperity once more. But as the months stretched on, the promised good fortune did not return. Instead, the family's financial situation grew even more dire. Yet, rather than questioning the efficacy of the rituals, Chow and Hong found themselves trapped in a psychological web. Daphne convinced them that the curse was far deeper and more stubborn than she had initially realized, requiring more elaborate, more frequent, and significantly more expensive rituals to combat. desperate to keep the spiritual protection alive. The family began to pour their remaining funds into Daphne's hands. When their savings were exhausted, they began to borrow, running up an astronomical bill on credit with the spiritual advisor. Over the course of months, the debt ballooned to an extraordinary sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne, far from a benevolent guardian, began to show her true colors. She was a spiritual loan shark, and she had no intention of letting such a massive debt go unpaid. It was against this tense backdrop of mounting debt and quiet desperation that the ultimate tragedy began to take shape, a tragedy that would shatter the peace of the Arlington community and leave even the most experienced law enforcement officers deeply shaken. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at exactly 7:29 in the morning, the quiet of the emergency dispatch center was broken by a call. The voice on the other end belonged to Chow Tran. He spoke in a rushed, trembling voice, his English strained by immense anxiety. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. He explained to the dispatcher that his family had gathered outside the couple's apartment because